This is a Kitty Pod production. The Keep It To Yourself podcast was taped in front of a live studio audience.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Hey, man!
I'm your friend.
I don't fool with no horses, boy.
He's a habitual line stepper.
Any savage at all,
Your mustache is crooked.
Come on, man. What we doing out there, man?
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Oh, my goodness gracious!
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
I'm the man, the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour.
Plausibly live, but recorded in parts, from the rolling hills of Saratoga County, New York. It's the one, the only Keep It To Yourself podcast. And now, here's your host, Jason Bullitt. I have no idea who he is. But he was dug and dug. Alright, that's enough, Morgan. And once again, you're quite welcome. This is episode number 121 of the Keep It To Yourself podcast. My name, of course, as always, as you heard earlier, is Jason Bullitt. Welcome aboard, everyone. Here we are getting toward the end of April, beginning of May. This is an exciting time. We're right in the middle of spring, rain showers and all. As a sports fan, I'll get to this later on or maybe in a future episode. Big time to be a sports fan, especially this year with what's been going on. I'll get to that later on. As I said earlier, I sound like a broken record now, but I'm finding a hard way to start this episode. But I'll give the plugs for my social media right now. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at keep_podcast. There's the Keep It To Yourself Facebook page. Civilian Instagram is Jason_51838. And there's also the world's loneliest email, kitypod@gmail.com, if you want to email me and get a hold of my brain that way. I wanted to start this episode before I get to the vanity portion and whatever it is we're going to be talking about here. I want to give a brief shout out to a friend of the show, Jim Perillo. Some time ago as I record this, Jim Perillo had a small wedding in Brooklyn, New York. He married his fiancée, Fifi. I congratulated him over the weekend, and he said that there will be hopes for a bigger ceremony taking place later this year. I'm certainly on the guest list, got myself on there. Not trying to flex my podcasting muscle to try and wangle an invite, but he's on the list for sure. Or I'm on the list. Hello. I feel great, you know. Well, Jim was on the list for shout-outs here. That's the only one I got this week, so there ends that. And now we go to the vanity portion of this podcast. What have I been up to? What has been going on in the life of one J. Michael Bullitt? A good deal since this pandemic has began. Been over a year, which is insane to think about. But I'm going to start with Easter Sunday. I had the house to myself for part of the weekend. My father and his companion did not come back until about sometime early in the evening, if I had to recall. Then we had the whole family over on Sunday, had Easter dinner, ham, all the stuffings, all of that. Got a chocolate bunny. I used to get gifts for Easter. I would just get one and that was it. But, well, being with family and having some great people around me is gift enough. So there you go right there. I shouldn't be too greedy as I get ready to kick 40 right squat in the teeth. Well, not too long after that, my dad's old medical trouble started getting the better of him, and now it looks like they're about to win out. Not that he's going to be dying or anything like that. His old hip problems from last year have come back in full force. So much so that he wound up having to go to a chiropractor. He was out of whack in terms of his alignment for a little while. But that got settled, and he went to see his doctor at the VA hospital in Albany. VA is Veterans Administration for those of you outside the United States. He got a good checkup. That was actually his physical. He's had to walk around with a cane for most of the time, and I don't think he's going to be driving anymore. I don't know, turn in the license perhaps? I don't know if I want to bring it up with him, but I'm sure to get a sharp rebuke one way or the other. So there you go right there. That's just a brief summary, all too brief, and I'm hoping that this is the episode 121 right here, the old Kitty Pod, that I bring on Adam Parada. Now, episode 119... or somewhere along those lines. Yeah, 119. Yeah. From what I recall, I started doing the one last thing or one more thing, the little commentary segment at the end of every episode, trying to freshen things up around here. And I talked about the movie Coming to America. This is the sequel to the original Coming to America. I talked about it. And my hope is that I get Adam Parada on the show to discuss the movie and where this movie ranks among Eddie Murphy's filmography, our favorite films that he has ever done. Well, I've yet to hear back from him. That was the original plan, but I'm going to talk a little bit about 5 years of podcasting. Well, not 5 exactly. This is the start of my 5th year. April 29th was the 5th year starting for the Kitty Pod, the Keep It To Yourself podcast. I've told it many more times before, but back on April 29th, 2017, the first episode of this here podcast was put on podcast feeds everywhere, and my life had changed a month prior with my mother passing away of cancer. I needed that outlet. My mom was such a great sounding board and put up with whatever, sorry for that stutter stuff there, put up with whatever I was going to say. I would go to her for advice, opinions, just to chat. That first part was easy for me to say. Anywho, it's been quite a ride doing this. I apologize for not doing it as often as I should or have been early on. I've been listening to some of the older episodes. Thank you, Google Drive, for preserving those. I got to get some of the very early ones, including the first one I ever did way back when. It's been a heck of a ride. I've had to go through 3 different podcasting platforms. There were some episodes that from the switch from Podbean to Anchor have been an absolute cluster, you know what. Losing all those, but thankfully I've got those preserved. And every now and again, between now and the actual 5th anniversary, April of 2022, if I'm still doing this by then, and I'll be re-releasing these episodes as occasion arises. It won't be one big dump, it'll just be a slow trickle every now and again. So for these last 5 years or however long it's been, as I enter my 5th year of podcasting, whether you've been with me the whole time or you just got on board, thank you so much for the support. I truly appreciate it. As I mentioned, I went through 3 different podcasting platforms. I started out with this little thing called Opinion and recorded that way. And then once Opinion's free hosting service went kaput, I had to switch everything over to Podbean. Thankfully, I didn't have too many episodes in the can, so uploading everything wasn't a real you-know-what. The sheer volume nowadays would be a more Herculean task. So I went from Podbean, it was all good. Then they were really charging an arm and a leg for hosting. I said, screw it. Then I found Anchor FM as a great alternative, and I've been on here since towards the end of 2019, times before COVID. I remember when I couldn't get guests in person, I had to call over the phone. I had this app called Tape My Call, and that's why the phone conversations sound different. It's not me talking into a microphone. It wasn't back then. It would be a whole conversation recorded over the phone as the name would suggest. Then I started getting people like high school classmates of mine, good friends. We would go out to public places, back when you could do such things and not have to worry about getting sick. Those were fun. Those were always a blast to do. There were some that sure stick out in the memory even all this time later. And now with the pandemic, if I still want to get guests on, I don't have to really go to a public place and risk my health. I got Zoom going for me now. And you've heard those interviews going in recent times. It's been a real hoot and a holler to do those things. It's just the evolution going with the times here. I got a microphone recently, though I've kind of gone back to my roots, recording this whole thing on my phone now. What a way to mark the occasion. Start your 5th year of the Kitty Pod. And I remember some of the older episodes, I would be doing it while I was driving, and I have not done that anymore. I've just stopped doing it. Probably wasn't going to be safe. And a good thing for me and my fellow motorists, too, that I stay off the roads and cast the pods. I really don't want to do it. It may as well be like drinking and driving. It's something you should never do. Some people do it, but there's going to be hell to pay one way or the other. So there you have it right there. Hopefully Adam Parada will be available for a future episode. I haven't heard back from him yet. And I really got to start expanding the whole thing with getting guests on board here Might want to do more of that if I want to keep this thing going. I know you don't want me to go away. Some podcasts, they just drop one episode, then you don't hear from them for a while. They just up and disappear. But there you have it right there. So 5 years, this is going to be a lot shorter show than usual. Those history segments really added some length to it. I'm starting to realize now. But there you have it. So the Kitty Pod starts its 5th year of podcasting, and there'll be some great stuff, hopefully, coming up in the near future. Before we get to the end of this insanely short episode of the Kitty Pod, I got some pod shout-outs I want to get to, and then one more thing, and then we'll get you out of here. So soon? Shrug shoulders. In terms of pod shout-outs, there's Greetings from Allentown, WWF Wrestling Challenge from April 4th, 1993, the day of WrestleMania 9. And then 5 years to that exact day, WWF Shotgun Saturday Night. And also worth checking out on the weekends is GFA Live, Peter Winston and Keith Langston. Tear it up. The Sportscaster with Steve Bennett. Steve had baseball writer Keith Law and Devin Gordon keeping on the theme of the national pastime, a book about the New York Mets. Those two chatted up about that book. The Break It Down show had some heavy hitters. Will Riley, chief among them, talking about whether race is an issue here in the United States. And back to baseball, Dan McLaughlin discussing baseball and why MLB decided to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. The Loyal Littles podcast, Luke Overbay and Jeff Turner, those are some great episodes. You want to check those out. And speaking of baseball, we're going to get to it here with the One More Thing segment to end the show. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who already do, I am a big fan of the New York Yankees. Baseball is my favorite sport of them all, though football does come in a close second. And the Bronx Bombers themselves, the New York Yankees, have had quite the struggle to start the 2021 MLB campaign, Major League Baseball, that is. I mean, the hitting's not been there. Gary Sanchez had a little hot bat for a while, but that went away right quick. Aaron Judge, I mean, the Yankees have been coming on recently. Now, granted, we got some of the dregs recently, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Detroit. I'm recording this. I started recording late April. Here I am in early May. We wrap up the series this afternoon. I say we like I have anything to do about it. So, it's been great to see the Yanks get on a roll, but granted, they're going to choke it up again when one of the big dogs comes on their schedule, gets on their radar, if you will. It's been a struggle also watching the games and the times I have been able to do it, mainly because YouTube TV decided to make the dumb decision to get rid of the Yes Network, just yank it off their lineup. I have the Yes Network app, but I have to have like a Spectrum subscription of some sort if I want to watch any of the games live, if they're not on ESPN or they're on broadcast television, which when they are on YouTube TV, that's always a treat. It's a shame I have to say that, but I'm paying for the YouTube TV, also for my dad and my companion. That's the only service I have where they have local news. Thankfully, they get local TV stations, so I can still watch Jeopardy every night and that. But it's sad not having the Yes Network, being able to watch all those Yankees games, even the mid-season ones. But the Yankees are improving, and hopefully YouTube TV will come to their senses and put the Yes Network back on their lineup. I sure miss hearing Michael Kay's dulcet tones. Bit of an alternative compared to John Sterling and Susan Waldman. No offense against them. But there you go right there. And that will do it for this episode of the old Keep It To Yourself podcast. A mini full episode, or a full mini episode, if you will. Strike out that which does not apply, though you may want to take both of those out because I put your mind in a pretzel on hearing that. Anyway, it's episode 121 of the Kitty Pod in the books. Don't know what we've got going up for the next week or so, or whenever I talk to you again. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, however insanely short it was. Thanks for listening. You can listen on the podcast of your choosing, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. Oh yeah, there's also my sister podcast, CR Crime, back for season 2. And we got a cold case on our hands, the murder of Ruth Whitman back in 1959. You'll want to give that a listen, just as brief as this episode. Anyway, thanks for listening to this episode. I'll talk to you on the next one, whenever that may be. And as always, and above all else, wait for it. Wait for it. Keep smiling. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Oh my goodness gracious!